Hey folks, Malforian here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the full patch notes for the 1.11 Peacock changelog. This is for the launch of Legacy of Persia. This is all the changes in the free patch, and then obviously setting up for the DLC as well. And we're just going to get straight into it. As always, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here. I cover Crusader Kings and other historical strategy games on the channel, but let's get into the features. So, added the Iranian intermezzo struggle, covering the conflict in Iran between the Caliphate and the resurgent Iranian dynasties. This is part of the DLC, as I said. There are 3 different endings on this, and as they mentioned in a previous dev diary, this one is a little bit faster and a little bit easier than the Fate of Iberia struggle. So if you didn't really like how that struggle played out, it was a little bit annoying, especially when you really struggle to kind of get it completed sometimes due to the requirements. This time they've spruced it up a little bit, they made it a little bit easier, and they've put in a lot more kind of features and ways to control it than we had previously. So I think it's looking pretty good this time round. Definitely an improvement to the previous one. And then next, they've added a new Dynasty Legacy, which they didn't cover in any of the dev diaries, surprisingly. And this one is called Brilliance, and it focuses on reclaiming the glory of the old dynasties of Persia. And this is DLC featured as well. Now, at first I thought that didn't make sense, but actually when you look at it, it does make sense because everything in there is about the Persia content and doing the Persia DLC content, basically. There are some bonuses outside of that, but it really is for Persia. In fact, the requirements to even see it is to be a Iranian heritage character, so that's why it's so focused on it. But we are going to take a quick look at what that looks like, and it is up here, Brilliant. So the first one is Sense of Purpose. This gives you an additional tax jurisdiction, which is a pretty nice bonus, and then Aptitude of Master Assassin, Court Scholar, Chief Quadi, I apologize, definitely butchered that pronunciation, Lady in Waiting and Royal Architect are plus 10 for their aptitude, so a nice bonus outside of just giving you some extra money from the tax jurisdictions. Lofty Ambitions is next. Personal Power Scheme plus 25%. Personal Scheme Success Chance plus 15%. Monthly Stewardship Lifestyle Experience plus 15%. And Hostile Scheme Success Chance versus Dynasty members plus 10%. So a lot of bonuses around schemes, but then also that 15% monthly Stewardship Lifestyle Experience is pretty nice, especially stacked with the other monthly Lifestyle Experience modifiers you can get. Some pretty high modifier stacking with those, so I'm pretty happy with the second one. The first one's pretty good. The second one I think is really good. And then the third one is a Light of Glory, Courtly Vassal Tax Contributions plus 15%, Glory Hound Levy Contribution plus 15%, Marriage Acceptance from Dynasty members plus 10, which obviously if you're playing as a clan is pretty important, so it's a nice bonus there. Skills when performing Vizier Council tasks plus 25%. So overall you're getting more money, you get more troops, you're getting more marriages, and you're getting more successful councillor tasks from your Vizier. So overall, oh wait, no, actually, I think it means if you're the Vizier. Anyway, either way, just a wide range of bonuses similar to Lofty Ambitions, but obviously more around kind of like empire building in a way, due to having more money and more troops. Then Ancient Authority can enact the Mughal Status Tax Decree, bestow Royal Favor Councillor task is 20% better, and can recruit Azawira Men-at-Arms, which is basically a special archer cavalry unit. As you can see from the screen at the moment, they look pretty good. They are relatively expensive, but they're not that bad, especially for the stats they've got there. And obviously they're good in plains, drylands, and desert mountains. Not good in icy conditions, which makes perfect sense where you're going to be playing these units for the most part, unless you head kind of into the Himalayas or you're fighting off the Mongols, I guess, in the far reaches of a expanded empire. You're generally going to be fighting in those kind of lands for the most part. There is hills and mountains they're not good at, so I guess really going into the Byzantines or something like that, they're not going to be as good. But looking at the stats, they're pretty decent. They are relatively expensive, but they're really not too bad. And obviously the other bonuses here are just a better version of a tax decree and the bestow royal favor council task, which I'm going to be honest, guys, leave a comment down below. I don't think I've ever used that councillor task, but maybe I will now with 20% more. And then Splendor Reboard, and all it says for this is a decision that enables you to improve your capital at the cost of a recently conquered county. I think what this does is removes development from a recently conquered land and basically shovels it into your capital so you can use it to kind of build tall in your capital and just keep piling development into it as much as you can. I think that's what it does. Someone leave a comment down below if you've unlocked this, but I believe that is how this decision works, which is pretty good. You're just conquering places and just moving stuff to your capital, making your capital better and better, which means you'll get more tech unlocks and things like that from your development. So yeah, overall, I think this Brilliance one is pretty good. It is, you could say, pretty brilliant. I'll leave my code at the door. But yeah, it's not too bad. I don't think it's like crazily overpowered. It's a nice like range of things. As always, I think most people are going to go down like Blood and the other generally used legacies, but I like this one. I think in the upcoming campaign on the channel, based around the Persia DLC, I think we'll take this one just because it fits obviously with the area. And as you can only use it in that area, it's obviously a good one to pick because you can't use it elsewhere. So yeah, I don't think that one's too bad. I think it's a relatively good addition to the game, but we'll obviously see as we play through some campaigns. And then what we've got next is added a new UI skin for the Iranian heritage culture, so we just get a nice updated UI, very much like the Northern Lords one and things like that. New portrait assets, new events, decisions and interactions in the Iranian area for the struggle, Islam, clan realms, characters traveling in the region, tax collectors and more. So a bunch of new events as part of the DLC. Added new cultural traditions in the Iranian culture, fierce independence, pragmatic creed, jirga, enlightened magnates, beacon of learning, irrigation experts and frontier warriors. Some of these have looked really good. They were covered in the previous dev diary, so I won't go through them too much here. As always, I am covering all the dev diaries, so you can look back into the old ones if you are interested in exactly what they are. The Beacon of Learning one was especially good, if I do remember correctly. Added new types of men-at-arms, as we've seen with the previous Dynasty Unlock, but there are also a couple of other ones as well, which are nice upgrades, especially in that area. Added 2 new extra tax decrees when playing in the Iranian region. And then as it says here, the tax decrees section is actually part of the free patch, but these 2 extra versions are part of the DLC, so they're basically like souped-up versions of some of the other ones. Added a new court scholar position for cultures with a beacon of learning, which they talked about before. When employed, court scholars will over time increase in skill, and good or excellent court scholars can be sponsored to create a research project inspiration, resulting in a new innovation for your culture or new modifiers for your clan. It sounds like if you have one of these good or excellent, I would imagine the better they are, obviously the more chance this is of happening. I would still think it's a low chance, but just unlocking innovation is a really good bonus. It'd be interesting to see exactly how often that procs, but again, pretty good. They also have a chance of getting you book and alchemy inspirations, which is a nice bonus. Added a new Master Assassin Core position, which you can only get if you have the Fedayeen Tenant. And then they've added 3 new struggle music tracks and 3 new Persia regional mood tracks. The music in this game, as we all can agree, is fantastic, so we're getting some more as part of the DLC as well. And then we're on to the free features. Added a new bookmark, so basically just some suggested characters when you first load into the game, a bit of back history, so you've got a good reason as to why you might choose each one. House Unity, which they covered quite extensively in one of the previous dev diaries. As I said, I've got a video about that on the channel, but basically the more either harmonious or antagonistic your clan is, you can get unlimited invasions, you get no invasions, you can get other crazy bonuses and things like that, special decisions, interactions, abilities. It's pretty cool. There isn't like a good way of doing it. You can be very unified, you can be very antagonistic, and you do get different, equally as good bonuses basically for each side of it. So it's a cool way of bringing some extra replayability in these areas. And then clan vassals can be assigned as tax jurisdictions, handled by a tax collector. Again, we're covered in a previous dev diary. Depending on the aptitude of your tax collector and what tax decrees is assigned to the jurisdiction they have, you can basically get different benefits or different penalties, and you can assign different vassals to these different tax collectors and then specialize that tax collector in different ways. So you can have jizya tax decree for your heretic vassals. So although they don't believe in your religion, they basically give you more gold and more troops, I believe, than your other vassals would do, and you get less other things from them. So it's a cool way of basically just using them to empower your armies, get you some more money. But yeah, again, another little cool system, kind of differentiates it from feudal even more. And viziers, clan realms of a duchy tier or above, can now assign a landless character to be their vizier. Viziers provide extra tax jurisdictions, and their aptitude helps all tax collectors in their realm. The more empowered they are, the bigger the benefits, though they will also try and embezzle your funds. But they do embezzle that money, and then you can use the mult interaction to basically say, hey, you've been stealing money from me. Look, I turned a blind eye, but I've got a war coming on. I need that money. And then basically use that money however you want to. You do have to be careful. If they get very powerful, it kind of uses the regent system. They get very powerful, and it can be hard to remove them. If they're exceedingly entrenched, you do have to potentially give them a duchy or something to kind of buy them off and say, look, just leave my court. Here's a duchy somewhere. Go rule that and find a new vizier to take their place. So again, another interesting kind of feature coming into there, and it is part of the free patch, which is fantastic to see. And then the next one is going to be one a lot of people are happy about. When starting in 867, the Turkic Seljuk dynasty will now invade Iran in the late 10th century. An associated game rule can regulate when this invasion happens. So yes, you can finally get that Seljuk invasion happening properly. and you can go into the game rules and you can basically randomize it slightly, so it can either happen at roughly the same time, or you can kind of move it out within like I think a couple of 100 years time span, so you don't know exactly when it's coming, kind of moves it around a little bit. So I know a lot of people have been wanting a bit more of this in the game, so hopefully this does exactly what you want, and we see some Seljuk campaigns that are a bit of fun, and kind of seeing how that affects the region. And then added an event chain for the Sanj Rebellion in Lower Mesopotamia shortly after the start of 867, just a cool bit of flavour in the area, and then added a number of new special buildings in the Iranian region, the Minaret of Jam, the Walls of Gorgan, and then a bunch of other ones. So some nice special buildings. Actually, there's quite a lot of special buildings here. There are some mines as well. The Tomb of Cyrus the Great and the Mines of Sharisang. A lot of cool little buildings down here. A lot of stuff you want to take and get those bonuses. The Rainbow Mountains, I'm after those. They sound cool. So maybe we'll do that in the campaign coming on the channel. And then outside of the special buildings, some of these are also obviously like the Rainbow Mountains are just like natural wonders in the world. Kind of interesting to see how they play out in the game as well. But that is it for the free features. So we've covered the paid and the free. Next we're on to balance. This is obviously game-wide. Don't need the DLC for this. All the future stuff listed here is just part of balancing and bug fixing for the most part. But there are some really interesting changes in here that I wasn't expecting. So cost of disinheriting bastard children or children with disputed heritage is lowered. If the illegitimacy is a secret and the father knows the secret, it is lowered and the secret is revealed. Certain wars now resolve quicker as the war score from battles and attacker occupations has been increased by 150%. Conquests, holy wars, subjugation, vassalization, struggle clash, border raid, expel interloper, and excommunication war are all affected by this. So this should really speed up some of those wars that just get bogged down and you kind of get bored of them. You're like, come on, let's just get this finished. It looks like you're going to be able to do that with this change, which is cool to see. Conquest and invasion CBs now have a dynamic cost scaling with realm size. This should make the CBs cheaper for smaller realms and more expensive for very large ones. I'm not sure how this is going to change exactly. Some of the dynamic costing in this game goes a bit bananas, so hopefully it doesn't get crazy expensive, but I think it will stop the very large realms kind of snowballing to an effect later on in the game, where they can just do these CBs for relatively nothing compared to how much kind of points they've got, and they can just roll over people pretty easily. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Having smaller realms be able to do them easier is a lot better as well. Helps your smaller realms kind of recover a little bit or maybe fight back. Again, a cool change. We'll see how it plays out. Chthonic readouts are no longer impossible to convert in mountains. It's now minus 75% instead of minus 100. This is a good change. I never encountered this myself, but yeah, having it basically impossible was a little bit annoying if you needed to convert that land. De jure CBs are now available one era earlier than before. This is actually one I'm really happy about. I'm kind of surprised they didn't call this out a little bit more. Sometimes in these patch notes, I think they should like bold some of these. Some of them are definitely major changes compared to some of the other ones. Having the de jure CBs available one tier earlier is just going to make kind of expanding and consolidating land just that little bit easier. So a fantastic change, I think, there. And the next, another one a lot of people are happy about. Forming the HRE is now possible using any core Carolingian kingdom, not just East Francia, and the de jure can now include the Empire of Francia if West Francia or enough Francian kingdoms are part of the realm of the one forming the HRE. This is just going to mean the HRE is going to form more often. You're probably going to see the AI be able to do it a lot more. I think in all the time I've played this, I think I've seen the AI form it once. With this change, we should see it happen a lot more often because you don't have to have East Francia, and that's kind of the only way you could do it. There's a lot more options here, which is great. Rebalance the piety and prestige costs for conquest and invasions to make them more accessible for smaller realms. So again, coupled with the CB change, it's going to make your smaller realms more able to do these invasions, because I think some of them get like ludicrously expensive pretty quick, and you just couldn't do them without building up loads of prestige to do it. And then it was pretty difficult to do that. And then a lot of the next changes are all around prestige. I think we can all agree prestige stacking got a little bit ludicrous, and a lot of these are aimed at bringing that down. So reduce prestige gain from amenities and exceeding your grandeur level, reduce prestige from the Marauder accolade, removed all sources of prestige percentage gain bonus from innovations to reduce inflation. So that totaled 20% if you had all of these. Again, quite a big change, especially coupled with the previous changes. Significantly reduced prestige gain from artifacts. I would agree with this as well. I think some of the artifact stacking you could do was pretty insane. So that's just general monthly gains, prestige from dread, prestige from having knights. The prestige from knights one is one that really got out of hand, I think, before, because it was relatively easy to have like 10 or 12 knights. And if they gave like 1 or 2% per night, it was stacking pretty crazily. So it's good to see they've taken that into account and lowered those ones as well. Slightly reduced prestige bonuses from the diplomacy lifestyle perks. I'm not too sure about this one. I think going down the diplomacy lifestyle perk should give you a lot of prestige bonuses. You are sacrificing quite a lot of other bonuses you can get from other trees. So I think that one should have stayed the same, but I guess it's only slightly reduced, so it's probably not too bad. Slightly reduced prestige from the bodyguard position. I would have been happy with just removing it from this. I don't think there's like that much prestige from having a bodyguard. I guess if you knew a king and he had like 2 bodyguards, you'd be like, wow, he's obviously doing well for himself. So I guess having prestige there makes some sense, but I would have been happy to remove it from there and leave it in the diplomacy tree or something like that. Switch some innovations around for Arabic heritage cultures so that Caliph can revoke titles from game starts. It's going to make it a little bit more interesting to play there from the beginning. As we mentioned above about the HRE, the AI should now have a much easier time forming the HRE from the 867 start. That's all it says. I imagine that's basically because of the previous change, because outside of that, I'm not sure what would make it easier for the AI to do it. I think it must be mainly talking about the above change, about how you can form it, because it doesn't give it any more information. The AI no longer pays prestige to revoke court positions, as they would never abuse court positions in the first place, and the prestige loss could cause them to fairly often be unable to declare wars. This is one of the changes in this patch notes which kind of splinters how things work between the player and the AI, which I know obviously some things generally work that way anyway in video games, to make them more difficult, and I'm sure someone can mention in the comments subsystems already work like this in the game that I just can't think of off the top of my head. It is kind of weird that the AI basically just doesn't pay prestige to revoke court positions. It's because the AI basically never did it, so it basically makes no difference that it doesn't cost them it, and instead they can use that prestige to declare wars. I think this is basically to cover the fact that the AI just randomly did it when it shouldn't have done, and the only way they could really fix it is to basically just remove the cost. So they can carry on doing it as much as they want, but they won't go into a crazy prestige loss just because it's constantly changing the core positions. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. And then a couple of more buffs to the Mongols. So the Mongols during this game have just got gradually more and more powerful with every major patch that's come out. And again, they're getting some more buffs here. So the Mongols now get better siege engineer characters. The Mongols now have a bonus to cavalry damage and toughness to offset their lack of stationing bonuses, because obviously they're just going crazy and they're not stationing units in different places. The Mongols now spawn with trebuchets instead of mangonels. So yeah, they've got better siege engineers, they've got better siege equipment. They should be taking even more land during some of these invasions. And we've seen some crazy ones. I've seen them getting to Italy, I've seen them getting to Germany almost. So yeah, again, in this patch, we'll see how far the Mongols can get. And then the next one is pretty major. Again, this one I think should be in bold. Harm events will no longer target the player by default, only the AI. This is another thing where the AI is now technically different to a player. And this is crazy because harm events were a relatively recent addition to the game. I know there's been a vocal part of the community that hates these events, but you could turn them off in the game settings. But now by default they are turned off and you have to turn them on for them to be even in the game, which is a little bit crazy. It's a little bit disappointing. I think they could have changed this, so maybe they didn't happen every lifetime like they did before. Maybe they just happen like once in 5, or, you know, a randomized chance that they could happen. So maybe you'd never see one, but then also there was a chance you could couple a few together and have a bad run of luck. But I think to just turn them off by default, I'm not going to say disappointing, but it's a little bit kind of like, I'm not sure if I agree with this, because I think they were a good addition. I can see why people didn't like them, but kind of coupled with that, they have increased the odds of getting through a harm event. As you can see in the next one, they basically changed the percentages. I will agree that the 80-20 was maybe a little bit harsh, so I can see why they've rebalanced that one to make it a little bit more forgiving for players. It's a bit wild to me that they've removed harm events basically, unless you go in and turn it on, which I think most players will just leave most game rules as default. Let me know what you think. I think most players do that. So that means they're never going to see all these harm events. So again, I think it would have been better to just kind of randomize how often you saw them, rather than basically just remove them from the game unless you turn them on. But they do still affect the AI. So the AI are going to be affected by this and you're not. It's going to be a buff to the players basically. The AI is going to become incapable and have their characters die, and you're not. So again, a pretty major buff, I guess, to player characters. And then funnily enough, the next one is actually kind of what I was just talking about. They have reduced the overall likelihood of harm events from happening, but it doesn't say how often, because I think before, unless your character died early in a way, you always had a harm event for every character if they lived long enough. This basically just says the incapability foreboding events are further reduced by half again. So it does look like even if you have the harm events turned on, you've got more chance to get through them unscathed, but then there's also less chance they'll even happen, even if you have them turned on, unless you change the game rule that turns them on more often and things like that. So it is good that they did make these game rules initially, because you can just turn them all back on, turn them back up to, I guess, the original settings and things like that, but you can, you know, just leave them turned off and basically pretend they never existed. The next one is Camel Cavalry Accolade only gives bonuses to Camel Cavalry, which just makes sense, doesn't it? But there we go, it is a change. The Create Cadet branch is now available to clan members only if they are in another realm than their house head. So a cool way to bring this in, but you've obviously got to be outside of your realm that your clan kind of house head is in, which is a cool change there as well. Some common activity pulse actions now grant mystic lifestyle experience for pilgrimages and witch rites. If you have an epiphany about the sanctity of nature during a hunt, you'll gain some mystic lifestyle experience. There's another activity pulse action, though somewhat rarer than the very common one for pilgrimages. You will get mystic lifestyle experience for visiting points of interest in religious sites and wonders while traveling. This is not restricted to religious sites of your own religion. Oh, so you can actually go to other religions as well. I guess they're all holy sites, so that's where you get a bit of a bonus for that. Added mystic lifestyle experience to some events, mainly travel ones that already had something to do with mystics. Holding a mystic communion will also give you mystic XP, which just makes sense, doesn't it? And that's it for the balance changes. I think overall pretty good. Definitely around the prestige changes and the CBs. I think they're pretty good changes. Some of the changes around, you know, forming the HR easier as well are good. And again, we'll see how well the Mongols fare with these changes as well. Next, just one change for AI. Lowered the value of higher tier alliances and increased the penalty for female above 30 years. Just making those kind of alliances and things a little bit harder if you're playing as a ruler that basically can't have children or soon won't be able to have children. And the next one to just some interface changes. Nothing too crazy here, so I won't read through them all. Basically just added some tooltip changes and just some little interface changes here and there, but nothing too crazy, to be honest. Next, we're on to art. Obviously, art is fantastic, much like the music in this game. Cool to see we're getting a bunch of additional art. We're getting some barbershop background things, 26 versions of Coat of Arms with Muslim and Iranian imagery and writing. So that's cool to see, especially if you're playing in that area. You can make it a little bit more kind of themed to that area. More backgrounds, more clothing. Now, the one thing I will say about this is there are some clothing here, but it isn't a lot, especially compared to like the community flavor pack or something like that. Some of these free mods that we have, there are some clothing here, but there's not a lot, to be honest. I kind of expected a little bit more. There's only like one armor, one war helmet. There's 3 beard types, 6 hairstyles, 8 patterns for Iranian clothes with 8 trim variations, some military unit models, and some illustrations and things like that for the heritage buildings and the other faiths in the area. So not too bad, but I kind of thought we'd get more clothing than this, like just 1 armor type, 3 nobility clothes. I don't know. I kind of expect a little bit more. I suppose the mods that we can get for free that do count towards achievements and things like that kind of fill in the gaps here. They already had a lot of cool armor and things like that in this area. Some fantastic ones, in fact. So I guess they'll pick up the slack in some ways. I wonder if that's why they don't do as many of these. It'd be interesting to know. We'll never find out, obviously, but I wonder if they do less of this kind of stuff because players can now use mods for achievements. They're like, well, the community flavor pack, some of the other ones, they do such a good job. We don't need to worry about it quite as much. So again, I'm sure these look cool. There was a dev diary that covered these. They are, you know, really cool looking. Some of the new artifacts and things look amazing. But yeah, I kind of thought we'd get a little bit more. There's obviously the 14 new buildings that they added before. And then some men-at-arms icons, decisions, icons, new loading screens, Iranian skin for the UI, which was covered in one of the points earlier, and then obviously some new icons and all that stuff. So yeah, nothing too crazy, just some new art, which is good. It makes it like more flavorful to play in that area because the UI is different. You've got all these different things in there, different clothing, all that good stuff. So it is good. But one thing is interesting is for players of the Northern Lords, those cloaks will now be used by more culture groups than just the Norse. They did cover this in a dev diary, but the cloaks that were just part of Northern Lords that you only ever saw if you were playing in the Viking area, basically, are now being used elsewhere. So kind of that content that you didn't really see that often if you weren't playing there is kind of getting branched out a little bit more. I would imagine to further bits of England, Northern Europe and things like that. I would imagine maybe into Russia a little bit more. You did kind of see them a little bit already because the Norse characters, but I think more of maybe like the Slavic characters and things, you'll see some of these cloaks. You get to see that content a little bit more, which is cool. Especially it's been out for what, like 2 years now? I'm not too sure. It's been a while. And it's cool to see that content elsewhere in kind of a small way, but you're going to take notice of it a little bit. And then next we've got audio, 3 more music tracks, 3 more mood tracks. This is obviously before the paid DLC music and mood tracks as well. So if you've got the DLC, you kind of get double this in a way. Some new War Declare music for the struggle, some more struggle ending effects, just basically some more sound effects and stuff in the area. Make it feel a little bit more Persian or Iranian themed. More music, as I said, always welcome. Localization, we're not going to go into, they basically just fixed how some things were incorrect with the localization. Game content, added a new set of unique succession laws for clan, activated by Unity level. This was kind of covered in the free features, but yeah, with higher Unity, you basically get a version, not of Primogenitor, but pretty much Primogenitor with high Unity without having to unlock that law. So a pretty cool change there. And then a bunch of them here are basically, because jizya is no longer a doctrine, has basically moved into like the tax system. They've basically been replaced for a few of the religions. So Ashari now has legalism, Ismailism has mendicant preachers, Buddhism has communal identity instead, and then a couple of other changes. Obviously for some of the religions and cultures there, I've had a little bit of a tweak, nothing too crazy though. And then user modding, as I always say, I play great mods on this channel. I have no idea how they work. So if you make mods, there's some changes here. I won't even pretend to know how they work. Databases, just a couple of changes. So they've updated some of the landholders in Iran, which they covered in a previous dev diary. Updated the 867 start date to better reflect the ongoing conflicts. So you do start with some wars already ongoing when you play in this area that weren't there before. Updated the culture and faith setup in the Iranian region. Added a new culture as well. Armenian rulers now start with religiously protected to avoid their faith disappearing too quickly in every game, so they can't be force converted. They can keep their faith alive and try play out a little bit more. These are some cool starts. If you're looking for a new campaign to do and you don't really want to play something exactly in the DLC, the Armenian rulers are a cool way to kind of do a campaign with their religion. It's a pretty fun one to do. Added the Nestorian community in Suyab in Zetsu in 867, representing their metropolitan see. They've merged the Abbasids back into the Hashemid dynasty. A couple of other changes for viziers here. Made Upper and Lower Lotharingia the default duchy titles, with Lorraine a French variant, and added Crane as the German variant. So just a bit of a change how they're going to look in game. And then they've added some traits that were missing from a certain house that were missing it. Next, we've just got bug fixes, basically. I'm not going to go through all the bug fixes. As you can see, there's quite a lot of them. As always, I will leave a link to this in the description down below, so you can take a look through all these bug fixes. Obviously, the most important one here, and the one that I think will upset some people, is reduce the amount of AI characters that are wearing glasses. So you're not going to see those weird upside down glasses quite as often as you do already. There you go. And that is it. That is the full patch note changes for this DLC and for the free patch. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I think there are some cool changes here, not just around the Iranian content. There's the Persian flavor and things like that, but there are also, as part of the free patch, and the balancing and changes around there. There are some things that are going to affect you no matter where you play on the map, especially with the CB changes and the prestige changes and things like that. I think it should kind of spruce the game up a little bit. We will potentially see the Mongols go even more crazy than they already do. Are they going to do a world conquer? Maybe one day the AI will manage that. We will obviously see. But anyway, with that, we're going to leave it there for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're new here, I cover Crusader Kings. I do all the dev diary coverage. We do Let's Play campaigns. We do achievement runs and all that good stuff on the channel, news stories. So yeah, if that's your kind of thing, subscribe. I also do cover other historical strategy games on the channel as well. But hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. I'm not going to keep you any longer. I'll see you in the next one.